Welcome, everyone. Today we embark on a journey to uncover the mysteries of the ancient past, legends from civilizations across the world, all pointing toward humanity's greatest question. Where do we truly come from? Get ready for a voyage through time as we reveal ancient inscriptions, monumental wonders, and controversial theories that may forever change the way we see human history. Ancient Mysteries of Mesopotamia. If there is one place on Earth that deserves to be called the cradle of human civilization, it is not Egypt or Greece, but Mesopotamia, the land shaped by the legendary rivers Tigris and Euphrates, where the ancient Sumerian civilization once flourished. More than 6,000 years ago, while much of the world was still hunting and gathering, the Sumerians achieved the unimaginable. They built the world's first true cities with monumental architecture. They invented cuneiform writing, the earliest system of recorded history. They calculated the movements of Venus, developed the sexagesimal system, the very foundation of minutes and hours we still use today. They established law, religion, and social hierarchies, and even left behind medical texts, educational records, and descriptions of human anatomy. What baffles modern scientists is how suddenly all of this appeared. There was no clear transitional stage, no evidence of learning from an earlier civilization. This raises a profound question. How could a culture more than 6 millennia ago have possessed such advanced knowledge? How did they know about astronomy, mathematics, engineering, law, and even describe gods descending from the skies? And this is where the name Anunnaki emerges. In the oldest Sumerian records, there is always mention of these divine beings, entities said to have descended from the heavens, teaching humanity how to farm, build, write, and fulfill the will of destiny. The question remains, were these merely religious myths or encrypted memories of a real encounter between early humans and an intellectually superior race from beyond our world? Our journey is not just an exploration of history, but a quest to uncover the true origins of humankind. And it all begins in this ancient land, where clay tablets still hold secrets long buried beneath the dust of time. Anunnaki in ancient inscriptions and Sumerian records. If the Sumerian civilization was the very cradle of humanity, then those who ruled and guided them, according to the ancient records, were not ordinary humans. They were called by a special name, Anunnaki. The word Anunnaki originates from the ancient Sumerian language and can be understood as those who came down from the heavens or the offspring of Anu, the supreme god who ruled the sky. But this was not merely an abstract religious title. Across thousands of clay tablets unearthed from ancient cities such as Ur, Nippur, and Eridu, the images of the Anunnaki are described in the striking detail. They were depicted as beings taller than ordinary humans, with long, curled beards, wearing domed headgear resembling helmets, dressed in patterned robes, and carrying strange objects. They did not ride horses or chariots, but were said to descend from the skies in glowing vehicles or fiery columns. According to texts such as the Epic of Creation, Enuma Elish, and especially the Epic of Atrahasis, the Anunnaki were not merely deities. They had an organized system resembling a royal court. At the top was Anu, god of the heavens, followed by his two sons, Enlil, in charge of the earth, and Enki, responsible for knowledge, technology, creativity, and biology. What is striking is that in these records, the Anunnaki were not described as immortal, omnipotent gods, but rather as advanced beings with technology, knowledge, and clear purposes for coming to Earth. They came not to bless, but to manage, exploit, build, and even create a new species, humankind, to perform the arduous labor on Earth. Some texts even describe how the Anunnaki, weary of mining work, held council and decided to create humans from the clay of the earth mixed with the blood of a sacrificed god. An account that, from a modern perspective, resembles genetic engineering or cloning. So, what are we really talking about here? Merely mythology or a simplified account from the ancients of an actual encounter between early humans and a more advanced species from elsewhere in the cosmos? What is remarkable is that these thousands of inscriptions never contradict one another, appearing across different eras in ancient Sumerian cities. The Sumerians did not revere the Anunnaki merely as articles of faith. They recorded them as history, as if these were events that truly happened, witnessed, and once formed part of reality. Strange technologies in ancient legends. If the Anunnaki were merely religious deities, then they should have been depicted with scepters, thunderbolts, or symbols of divine power. Yet what startled modern scholars is this. In thousands of Sumerian inscriptions, the Anunnaki are not only shown with power, but also holding objects described in ways that closely resemble technology. One of the most controversial artifacts is the Tables of Destiny. According to legend, this was a square or rectangular object that contained the governing laws of the earth and the universe, from the movement of the stars, the fate of humanity, to the ability to control weather, war, and life itself. Whoever possessed the Tables of Destiny would hold power over both the material and spiritual realms. Sound familiar? It resembles a system programming device or a quantum control center, something humanity today is striving to create through AI, blockchain, and quantum science. Moreover, Sumerian culture also spoke of a tool called me. The me were described as objects containing immense power and knowledge, transferable from one deity to another. Some records even list more than 60 different me: the me of war, the me of love, the me of kingship, the me of medicine, the me of art. Each me functioned like a module of abilities, akin to a skill hard drive that could be passed from one being to another. This has led many to ask, could the me have been a kind of knowledge chip, a form of biotechnological device designed to transfer data and abilities directly into a living mind? And if we take this further, could the me have been the very tools that transformed ordinary humans into gods, simply by transmitting data straight into their consciousness? The mystery does not end there. Several clay tablets, pottery, and temple walls unearthed in what is now Iraq and Syria have stunned archaeologists. They depict a human-like figure wearing a rounded helmet, dressed in a tight-fitting suit, carrying an object resembling an oxygen tank on its back, holding a tube-like device, and standing next to a tower-shaped structure with a pointed tip, strikingly similar to a modern rocket. Researchers have referred to this as the Sumerian astronaut and the ancient rocket. Although such interpretations are fiercely rejected by mainstream academia, one question remains: how far could the ancients truly imagine? 6,000 years ago, without electricity, without telescopes, without machines, how could they depict something so closely resembling astronauts and spacecraft? Could it be that what they carved was not imagination at all? The genetic engineering hypothesis: did they create us? Up to this point, if you thought the Anunnaki were merely gods who came to Earth to observe or bestow knowledge, you may need to reconsider. According to some ancient Sumerian texts, they came to Earth with a very specific purpose: to exploit resources, particularly mining. In the ancient epic Atrahasis, the Sumerians recounted that at first, the Anunnaki themselves carried out the mining in a place called Apsu, believed to be located in Africa or the Middle East today. But after years of grueling labor, they grew weary, rebelled, and refused to continue. At that moment, the Council of Gods convened and made a bold decision to create a new species, humankind, to work in their place. The description of this creation process in Atrahasis is shockingly peculiar. They took clay from the earth, mixed it with the blood of a sacrificed deity, and through ritual, the first being was formed. They called this the primitive human. Now let's look at this again. Mixing clay with blood, using the biological material of an intelligent being to generate a new species, combining biology with the natural environment. Doesn't this sound strikingly similar to primitive genetic engineering, akin to modern gene splicing technology, in which scientists combine the DNA of two different organisms to create a new one? What is fascinating is that this description is not unique to Sumerian texts. In the Bible's book of Genesis, it is written, "The Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being." In other words, dust as inorganic matter and breath as the spark of life or a special biological element. Two cultures, two distant regions, yet both describe the creation of humanity by combining natural material with a supernatural or higher element. So what does this mean? Could it be that humans are not the result of random evolution over millions of years, but rather a purposeful creation designed by a more advanced species, much like the way we create robots today? If this is true, then the greatest questions of human existence would be radically transformed. Who are we? Why were we created? And will our creators return one day? Did the gods once wage war? From the beginning of this journey, we have seen the Anunnaki as a superior race that came to Earth, created humankind, and bestowed fragments of their knowledge. Yet behind the divine aura of these creator beings, Sumerian records reveal something entirely different. Conflicts, even wars, erupted among the gods themselves. At the heart of these tensions was the rivalry between the two most prominent Anunnaki deities, Enlil and Enki. According to Sumerian inscriptions, Enlil held supreme authority over Earth. He was stern, uncompromising, and demanded absolute order. To him, humans were nothing more than tools, beings created to serve, with no right to surpass their boundaries. Enki, Enlil's younger brother and the one credited in Atrahasis with creating humankind, had a different disposition. Gentle and protective of humanity, he often defied Enlil's decrees of destruction. This stark opposition gave rise to profound conflicts, with humankind at the very center. Some texts describe Enlil growing furious as humans multiplied, became noisy, and disrupted cosmic order. He commanded plagues, droughts, and finally a great flood to wipe out mankind. Yet Enki secretly warned a mortal, Atrahasis, to build a vessel, a structure strikingly similar to the biblical story of Noah. Even more astonishing, some ancient inscriptions recount cities such as Sodom and Gomorrah being incinerated from the heavens. A fiery sphere exploded in the sky, unleashing a searing white light that melted stone and reduced entire cities to dust in an instant. These descriptions sound less like ordinary lightning and more like advanced energy weapons, or even thermonuclear explosions. What shocks scholars further is the evidence unearthed in parts of modern-day Iraq, where ancient Sumerian cities once thrived. Archaeologists have found layers of vitrified soil and stones deformed by extreme heat, along with traces of abnormal radiation. While not definitively proven, some believe these may be remnants of a colossal ancient blast. So did the gods truly wage war among themselves? And was this conflict not mere symbolism, but an actual battle, fought with technology that modern humanity has only begun to grasp? If so, the sudden collapse of the Sumerian civilization, once brilliant, then vanished without a trace, may no longer be a mystery. Perhaps it was not natural decline, but the ultimate consequence of a cosmic war between the very beings who had created us. Parallels across ancient civilizations. A major question often raised when discussing the Anunnaki is this: why is it only the Sumerians who recorded myths of gods descending from the heavens? The truth is, they were not the only civilization to tell such stories. Across the world, from the Middle East to the Americas to East Asia, we encounter astonishingly similar legends of giant beings who came from the stars, imparted knowledge, and then mysteriously vanished. The Nephilim in the Bible. In the book of Genesis in the Old Testament, there is a passage that reads, "When the sons of God came into the daughters of men, they bore children to them. These were the giants, the Nephilim, mighty men of old, men of renown." The Nephilim are described as extraordinarily tall, powerful, and not fully human. Many scholars interpret them as hybrids, the offspring of extraterrestrial beings, fallen angels, and humans. This bears a striking resemblance to the Anunnaki legends, gods descending from the heavens, creating humankind, and in some versions, producing a race of giants. The similarity extends beyond the story itself to its outcome. In the Bible, after the Nephilim appeared, humanity descended into chaos, and God sent the great flood to cleanse the earth, just as Enlil once sought to annihilate mankind with a deluge. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent of the Maya. In the Americas within the Maya and Aztec civilizations, there exists the legendary figure of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. He is depicted as a human-like being wearing a feathered headdress, said to have come from the stars. He taught the Maya how to build pyramids, observe the heavens, and organize their society. Afterward, Quetzalcoatl departed in a fiery vessel that rose into the sky, leaving behind a promise to return one day. This image is eerily similar to the accounts of the Anunnaki, beings who arrived to bestow knowledge, departed, and left a prophecy of return. And just like the Sumerians, the Maya possessed an intricate astronomical system and pyramids aligned as if to map the stars. The Yellow Emperor, son of heaven riding the dragon chariot. In the East, ancient China abounds with legends of the Son of Heaven, the descendants of the divine. In the classic of Mountains and Seas and many other ancient chronicles, the Yellow Emperor Zhuanyuan, ancestor of the Huaxia people, is described as the Son of Heaven who rode upon a dragon chariot. This celestial vehicle was said to soar through the clouds, radiating light and resounding with thunderous echoes. Other immortals were also depicted as traversing the skies, communicating through elixir breath, imagery strikingly similar to energy-based travel. Many modern researchers suggest that the dragon chariot described by the ancients may in fact represent some form of ancient flying craft, something that today we can only imagine in the realm of science fiction. This leads to a chilling thought. Could it be that, across the world, despite being separated by tens of thousands of kilometers, ancient civilizations were recounting the same story? A story of extraordinary beings descending from the heavens, teaching humankind, then vanishing, leaving behind traces we now call mythology. If it were mere imagination, why do so many details match so precisely? But if it were truth, then human history may be far more complex and mysterious than we have ever believed. Traces that remain to this day. At this point, you may still be skeptical, thinking these are only legends, religious symbols, or the imagination of ancient peoples. But if so, then how do we explain the physical traces that remain visible even today, on land, in stone, and even mapped among the stars? The ziggurats, landing sites of the gods. In the land once known as ancient Sumer, particularly in Ur, massive tiered structures of baked brick still stand, the ziggurats. These were not mere temples. According to ancient texts, they served as the very platforms where the Anunnaki descended from the heavens. Unlike the closed pyramids of Egypt, ziggurats were open structures, with broad stairways leading straight upward, as if forming a runway or landing platform for some kind of craft. Some inscriptions even describe the ziggurats not only as houses of worship, but as communication stations linking heaven and earth. Certain scholars have further suggested that they were deliberately built on sites of strong geomagnetic activity, aligned along the Earth's energy lines. Star maps too accurate to believe. At many sites across Mesopotamia, clay tablets more than 5,000 years old have been unearthed, bearing star maps. What astonishes researchers is their accuracy. They depict the precise positions of planets in our solar system, including Uranus and Neptune, planets that humanity only discovered in the 18th and 19th centuries with modern telescopes. How could the Sumerians have known of planets invisible to the naked eye? How could they have charted orbits, positions, and astronomical relationships without telescopes or satellites? Some theories propose that this knowledge was taught by the Anunnaki, or that it was a record of what these gods from the sky already knew. The figures with the bag and the wristwatch, ancient astronaut suits. One of the most hotly debated images lies in the bas-reliefs and stone statues depicting winged beings wearing rounded helmets, clad in tight-fitting armor, holding an object resembling a wristwatch, and carrying a small bag like a backpack. These images appear not only in Sumer, but also in Egypt, Mesoamerica, and even some temples in India, as if they represented a common archetype of a particular figure who once traveled across the planet. What is striking is that the small bag looks almost identical to the life support packs of modern astronauts, while the wrist device is indistinguishable from an information display, akin to today's smartwatch. Ancient artists had no reason to portray such detailed objects if these were merely symbolic representations of gods. So what then were these statues recording? A purely imagined deity, or the visual memory of an actual encounter with beings who once stepped out of flying machines from the sky. When confronted with evidence carved in stone, etched in clay, and inscribed on ancient monuments, we cannot simply dismiss it all as myth and move on. Could it be that what the ancients engraved was not meant to be imagined, but remembered? The extraterrestrial hypothesis and the forgotten civilization. After revisiting these ancient myths, puzzling carvings, and monumental structures that still endure today, one question becomes increasingly unavoidable. Who exactly were the Anunnaki? Were they gods of legend, or real beings who once walked upon the earth? The answer can be distilled into two major hypotheses. Both are controversial, yet compelling to those willing to view the world through an open lens. Hypothesis 1. They were extraterrestrials. According to many researchers such as Eric von Däniken, the Anunnaki were not products of human imagination, but beings from another world, bringing advanced technology and directly intervening in humanity's development. Re-examined under a modern perspective, texts like the Epic of Creation or the Atrahasis seem less like descriptions of divine miracles and more like records of technical activities. Flying craft, genetic engineering, energy devices, and unidentified weapons. All of these point toward technologies far beyond the understanding of the people of that era, who could only depict them through the imagery of gods. Under this hypothesis, the Anunnaki came to Earth to exploit its resources, created humankind as a labor force, and eventually departed after some unknown event, leaving behind scattered traces in the form of monuments, myths, and encoded memories. Hypothesis 2. Remnants of a lost human civilization. In contrast, a group of unorthodox scientists and archaeologists argue that the Anunnaki did not come from outer space at all, but from Earth itself, remnants of an ancient civilization that was once highly advanced and later wiped out. Imagine this. Around 10,000 years ago, a human civilization may have reached the pinnacle of technology, capable of flight, energy manipulation, even DNA control, only to be completely buried by a global cataclysm. Whether it was the Great Flood that followed the Ice Age, a devastating meteor strike, or destructive internal wars, this civilization collapsed. A handful of survivors, the last of the so-called gods, tried to pass down fragments of their knowledge to early human tribes. But as time passed, they were mythologized, transformed into legendary figures, and their civilization faded into the realm of myth. Ancient structures around the world appear aligned along ley lines, the supposed global energy grid. Many independent researchers have pointed out a striking fact. Monumental sites across the world, from the Sumerian ziggurats, the pyramids of Giza in Egypt, Angkor Wat in Cambodia, Machu Picchu in Peru, Stonehenge in England, to the Nazca lines in Peru, all line up in remarkable straight paths when mapped across the globe. These lines, known as ley lines, are believed to be Earth's energy channels, much like the meridians of the human body. Could it be that these gods, whether extraterrestrials or descendants of Earth's lost civilization, knew how to harness magnetic fields and geobiological energy, constructing their monuments precisely at the intersections of these power nodes? If so, then they were not merely centuries, but thousands of years ahead of us in technology and systemic thinking. So, what world are we truly living in today? A progressive modern age, or merely one stumbling in the dark, piecing together the scattered fragments of memory left behind by our forgotten ancestors? Whether they were beings from another world or remnants of a lost human race, one thing seems increasingly clear. The history of humankind may not be nearly as simple as we have been taught. Science and controversy. From clay tablets to ancient pyramids, from divine myths to theories of genetic engineering, we stand before a story both fascinating and deeply controversial. Were the records left behind by the Sumerians genuine history, or merely the mythologized imagination of an ancient people? This question has fueled an intense debate between two worlds: mainstream science and unconventional research. Mainstream science. There is no physical evidence. Most modern archaeologists and historians insist there are no direct signs that the Anunnaki ever existed. No spacecraft wreckage, no energy devices, no traces of alien genetics. They argue that Sumerian inscriptions and myths are symbolic, a way for ancient people to personify nature, assign divine power to natural phenomena, and transform vague knowledge into stories more easily understood. To them, belief in the Anunnaki is a step backward for science, encouraging pseudoscience and distorting our perception of history. Independent researchers. On the other hand, some physicists, biologists, genetic engineers, and aerospace experts argue that Sumerian myths are far too detailed, too logical, and too technical to be dismissed as mere fantasy. Descriptions of mixing clay with the blood of a god to create humans sound strikingly similar to DNA hybridization. Star maps so precise they defy belief without modern instruments. Objects such as the ME, the tablets of destiny, or the fiery sky chariots. These all resemble concepts of advanced technology. They ask, how could an ancient civilization invent such operational systems without a collective memory? Without the transmission of information from something that truly happened? This raises the greater question: is the history we are taught the truth, or just a simplified version? The question becomes more pressing as more ancient texts are discovered to have been ignored, dismissed into the myth box without full study. Could it be that today's textbooks present not the whole truth, but only a version simplified, accepted, and easy to control, while the most complex parts of history remain hidden in the shadows? Perhaps it is precisely because these accounts are too extraordinary, too far beyond our current understanding, that they have been rejected. And in that rejection, the most vital pieces of humanity's story remain buried, not under the ground, but beneath prejudice. Every new truth begins as heresy, and perhaps these ancient myths are nothing less than the final whispers of a forgotten knowledge. Where do we come from, and where are we going? After a journey through Sumerian legends, clay tablets, ancient architecture, genetic hypotheses, and wars among the gods, we return to humanity's most fundamental question: Where do we come from? And even greater, where are we going? If the Anunnaki hypothesis is true, then humans, ourselves, are not the result of random evolution, but a product created with intention, a species designed from the clay of the earth and the blood of the gods with a first mission of labor and service. So if we were not born naturally, what then is the meaning of our existence? Could it be that what we call the meaning of life is merely an explanation crafted by beings who no longer remember where they came from? And if one day the Anunnaki were to return, would we, the heirs of Earth, be mature enough, wise enough, and courageous enough to face our ancient creators? Or would we panic, deny, and continue to reject the past, just as history today so often does? The question is no longer about them, but about us. Has humanity truly prepared itself to confront its real origins? Perhaps all of this is only a hypothesis, or perhaps it is truth, sealed away by humanity's deepest fear. Fear that if the truth is too different from what we have been taught, the entire system of knowledge will collapse. Fear that if gods were engineers and myths were once historical data, we would have to rewrite the entire history of humankind from the beginning. But perhaps the time has come not to believe blindly in what is repeated. For sometimes what is taught is not meant to be understood, but to control. Maybe the past is still whispering to us, and only those willing to listen will be the ones who truly step into the future. So what do you think about the Anunnaki? Are they gods, extraterrestrials, or our forgotten ancestors? This story ends here, but the search for truth continues. What do you believe the Anunnaki truly were? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Stories Before Sleep, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the most mysterious stories about human history and origins. See you again on the next journey.